Hello, everyone. Dr. Christine Smith back for a really wonderful session today with, I think, just a human I really admire. I'm going to be talking to James Maskell, who is one of the founders of the Evolution of Functional Medicine community and Functional Forum. And I have been following his stuff for about 10 years and participating in some of the functional medicine communities that exist because of him. And they've just been an amazing way to things like group programs and why they matter and how our health has changed because we can all feel so lonely in our health journeys. And I am just so excited to have you here today. So, hello, James. How
I'm
are you?
doing really well. In fact, I'm not actually that well. I'm a little bit sick, but I'm here and I'm present and I'm grateful to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, even when you're feeling a little under the weather. I know you are always traveling and doing tons of conferences and meeting tons of people. So just really appreciate your presence and just a little bit of time to share wisdom with people and what you think is important. So I figure we could just kind of start with, can you just tell people a little bit about yourself and your passion and how you ended up in this niche? Because I know you've had quite an interesting life journey from living in communities and living all over the world and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was the weird kid at school that did natural medicine. I had a homeopath and a chiropractor, and I was born on a commune in Colorado. So I didn't realize that, and the commune life was spread between England and South Africa, mainly growing up, or I came to Colorado every summer. And through that experience, like experienced many things, but experienced like one form of healthcare, only to then go out into the like normal world and realizing that no one else experienced that kind of healthcare. And I guess coming to the conclusion that my parents are insane, right? Because that, like, why would you do those things when this thing clearly is the way that you're meant to do it. And then in university, I did health economics. So I did economics with a focus on healthcare, and in that process, realized that in our lifetime, like, we were going to go off a massive cliff, and that cliff was essentially the cost of healthcare. So whether you're in the UK with single payer healthcare or in the US, ultimately there would come a point, and we're approaching it right now, where if you multiply the number of people with chronic illnesses by the cost of those chronic illnesses, you end up in a situation where you just have an unsustainable cost explosion that no one can pay for. And so, I recognize that. I fought it off in my mind for a couple of years and took a normal job. But then I had a sort of a psychedelic dream that I needed to play a role in solving this problem. And so that's when I quit my job, moved to America, and just dived right into it, with the first question being, is chronic disease reversible? Like, under what circumstances is it? And basically, I've been following that thread for 18 years.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm just curious, like it just kind of leads nicely into that. What have you found about chronic disease being reversible?
Well, the vast majority of chronic illnesses are reversible. You can't do it. It's not, pharmaceuticals in general don't have the goal of reversing chronic illness. They're really there to manage the symptoms. You need to operate from within a different paradigm. And basically that paradigm is participatory, right? You have to participate in your care. And then, ultimately there's lots of different participatory, what would you say, like names for that participation. And there's doctors are trained in different things that will teach them how to facilitate participation and engage people. And then they have different ways of like understanding where you are on the chronic disease spectrum, what the root cause is. And so for the first few years, I worked in a clinic initially where I saw chronic disease being reversed. I then took a job selling to doctors like you to truly understand, like, what's out there. Is this one guy doing it, or is there lots of other people doing it? What's the name? What's the business model? What's the location? And by about 8 years into it, I feel like I had a pretty good idea of what was going on and what needed to happen. And so then I started to take action towards the solution that I could see. And that's been the last whatever, like the last 10 years, I guess.
I just I don't even know how to thank you for the stuff that you're doing to further medicine. And for anybody listening, any practitioners listening, there are functional medicine forum meetups that happen in like most major cities around the world. So you can go to their website, Go Evo Med, and check out those meetings. And you can just go and attend and listen to great speakers and connect with other practitioners who are trying to evolve healthcare. Because I was rereading your book, and you mentioned even right at the beginning, like that millennials peak health tends to happen around 27. That's a pretty scary statistic for everyone in newer generations coming to be. Like, what do you think has been the main cause of this? And one of the other things that you address that I think is so important is the loneliness factor. So let's touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, look, the first thing is being poisoned by the environment. If you want to take it like a step back, I mean, the food environment, the air environment, the water environment, all of that, the disconnection from self, the disconnection from nature, the disconnection from each other. That's the meta health crisis. And so ultimately, that's where I would say is, you have to work pretty hard to avoid the poison. And the way that whole species, or how whole communities have avoided the poison, is by working together. And so, not only is loneliness like one of the biggest poisons that we have to try and navigate, but it also it's a poison that we have to navigate. But more than that, the only way to navigate it, really, or the most effective, least costly, most efficient way to navigate it, is as a collective. And so that's part of the reason, all of the efforts, the things that I've built, have all been about creating communities, because one, it's easier, and two, emergent things happen that you can't expect that are just valuable. So, the Functional Forum started as a meetup in New York for doctors who do functional medicine, and it spawned hundreds of other meetups across the world. And, connections, clinics, organizations have all emerged from those kind of entities, right? So, so I think, and the whole purpose of it is that 2014, and there was only 3 of you in the town. If you just spent your time with other conventional doctors, you might start to think that you were crazy, because why aren't these people getting it? Like, why am I seeing this and they're not? Like, why are they so disconnected from a truth that I'm seeing? So in order to combat that, if you can be in a group and once a month or once a quarter get together and be like, oh, are you seeing that if you do an AIP diet, people can reduce their autoantibodies and reverse their autoimmunities? Oh yeah, I did it 3 times this week, right? That there's a level of mental health that is created by realizing that you're not alone, especially if you're out on the forefront of doing something new, right? That your profession has probably warned you against. And so that was the early days. But then, like, there's tons of value in patients getting together and working through, avoiding the poison as a collective. And so, that's where I've started to focus more in the last few years, because I recognize that I feel like, we created a pretty easy path for doctors to see the light, start and practice in a way that is in line with their integrity. And lots of other people are doing that as well. And so now it's like, okay, let's now go on to the next thing. And the next thing is really, how do we do that for people who can't afford to pay cash for it, essentially?
Yes, and that was one of the other things that I really liked that you had pointed out is the social economic status issue in healthcare, because it's ironic that the more expensive healthcare right now is to see a functional medicine provider who basically just educates you how to live a healthy lifestyle. Whereas the less expensive healthcare is getting drugs that aren't necessarily sustainable for solving chronic disease. And this is where I think your idea of community medicine is brilliant, and group programs. And I'm so glad that our society and our healthcare providers are moving more towards group programs, because then you can just sit there and educate people on the stuff that they need to know anyway. And once they know that stuff, they may not need the pill anymore. And so I think let's talk a little bit about the irony of how we're trying to protect information in healthcare with things like HIPAA, which makes you feel like the loneliest person ever and that you're the only person that has your condition, versus the fact that somehow it's okay to have all of our smartphone and social media information available but then like HIPAA's not. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's backwards, and all the things you shared are totally backwards. I mean, certainly when I talk to doctors about the idea of treating patients in a group, the first thing that comes up is the privacy issues. And it's like, these are 15 people who live in the same area, who have the same chronic conditions, and are basically like economically and humanly incentivized to actually help each other overcome their chronic illness. And you're concerned about giving up data in that position.
That they're giving up
Whereas but
themselves.
you wouldn't think it twice about doing whatever you do on social media and giving Mark Zuckerberg all that money and all of that data about you, and you're not concerned about that at all. So I mean, it is but it's just the way that we've been conditioned, somewhat. And so just it is the way that it is, and any new idea really takes a while to happen. But there's a lot of exciting examples of this really transforming care. So like in the book, I talk about probably the biggest group medicine in America right now is called Centering Pregnancy. And they can reduce preterm births by literally just putting women who are going to have baby at the same time and putting them in a group and, having them connect for the 9 months before they have a baby and then continue that connection going. You have a lot in common with another woman in your area who's having a baby at exactly the same time as you. So, why wouldn't we do that? In the UK, in the NHS, they do that, right? That's just part of the service, is they connect people who are having babies at the same time together. But it's been kind of unheard of in America. So Centering Pregnancy tries it, works it out. And it really, not only does it reduce preterm birth effectively, but it actually um, closes the gap between maternal outcomes, which are vast in America. Like if you're having a baby and you're in Mississippi versus if you're in California, that can be the chances of the chances of having an infant mortality moment in those two states are very wide. And so this has actually helped to close that gap as well.
And that's a pretty amazing concept because then out of these groups, even when they're over, these people can connect with each other and you have community that's long standing after your care rather than just, finally feeling better and graduating from your care and feeling totally lonely. So I think, yeah, these models are just, they're what's really needed in our society. And, for any practitioners listening or politicians, whatever, anyone who can actually change healthcare, I know that you have addressed, because everyone's, you know, let's just be real for a second. So the way that our healthcare industry looks at things, because it is a business, is that most of the time you can make more money off of doing surgical things and products that people will need repetitively over a lifetime versus teaching them how to no longer be ill. But you have been talking about a model that can actually work within our existing system that is profitable while teaching people how to be healthy so that healthcare is profitable rather than sick care. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about what some of those models look like?
Yes. So for the last 3 years, we've been testing out some models in commercial insurance or in insurance, Medicare and Medicaid, where it actually becomes more profitable for the entity to do it versus one-on-one care because you can bill 16 people's insurance for the time. And while that is interesting, like it doesn't really align. Like that model of payment doesn't it incentivizes all the wrong things, and that's part of the reason why we have this catastrophe unfolding in front of us. Some green shoots and some exciting things are that is changing, and we're shifting towards a payment model where organizations get paid sort of all in one, and like a capitated model where you get paid this much for a whole patient for a year, and then the incentives switch over 180 degrees. And so now the winner is the people that can keep people healthy for the lowest possible cost. And our model is basically using three very low cost scalable things: health coaches, technology, and groups. And so ultimately it's an act of radical empowerment to be part of these groups. And we are seeing that people are going through an education process. But if education was all that was needed, we would have already solved the problem, because of like this Instagram account or every summit or book or education. The thing that moves the needle is like information and the curriculum multiplied by closing the implementation gap. And that can be done by coaching, but is actually most efficiently done by groups, by people holding each other accountable and supporting each other, and it costs nothing.
Yep. And I've like, I know you've talked about this, but I experience it even in the group courses that I host. It's like there's an energetic component, even when it's over Zoom. There's like this energetic frequency component to healing, to being part of a community and feeling seen and understood by more than one person. And then that long-standing thing that can happen after the group too, because I have certain groups where like I just leave their chats open when we're done with the program. They still chat, they still post stuff, they still share recipes. Like it's awesome. I love seeing it. And it makes, I don't know, it just makes me feel like I'm having the effect I always wanted to have. Because I know a lot of practitioners, they want to help the world and they want to change things, but it's really hard to do one person at a time. And so starting to not only do it in a group, but have it continue beyond when you're there anymore, that's what I consider like a true win. You look
Well,
like
the
you got a
first
thought, go for it.
story that I tell in that book is of a doctor in working with immigrants in Massachusetts, and he gets enough money to do essentially like a 3-year group on type 2 diabetes. But after a couple of years, like most of them don't have diabetes anymore because they've been in this group meeting every week and doing healthy behaviors as a group. That group still exists 20 years later. And in the summer, it's salsa dancing, or in the summer, it's gardening, and in the winter, it's salsa dancing, because they came up with what they like to do and they do that. And they do things that are both like healthy and community activated. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, you just have to like set the foundation, create the agreements, and, create the container for people to support each other. And look, this is not just possible in the medical system, right? So in the book, there's plenty of examples of where people just went out and did it, right? Where a guy, I've got a story in the book of a guy who, had heart disease, realized that he was going to die if he didn't change his diet, realized that he was not going to be able to change his diet without some serious support, started something called the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group in Detroit, and within 6 months of basically making a Facebook group, had 7,000 members, and led to chapters all over the area, and an annual conference and all these kind of things, and it cost nothing for anyone. And all of these men, and mainly men in this area, were now cooking together, working together, sharing best practices. And so you have this like synergistic effect of upgrading the diet and upgrading the like social cohesion, and those two things are powerful. Ruben Gomez here, group fitness is a game changer. Yeah, I'm part of CrossFit. Like there's moments where I realize like I'm not going to push myself if I'm by myself, but when I see someone else doing it, or I'm running behind someone, jump in, and there's a lot of value in that as well. So yeah, the community model multiplied by healthy things is the model that I'm essentially advocating for in the community cure. The reason why I'm focused on doing it in healthcare is because in healthcare there's already budget set aside to do this. It's called Medicare, it's called Medicaid, it's called commercial insurance. And so, we got to build somewhere where there's actually already resources, rather than just hoping that people will pay for it, because there's plenty of people that will provide services for those people. If you have disposable income, you have a lot of choices. And ultimately, I'm in to solve the cost curve, not just, empower a few people.
No, I love that. And I was just at a CrossFit class this morning with the gym I collaborate with, and it's just there's such a family. Like I basically got adopted by them a couple of years ago, and I just haven't left because they've been amazing. And I walk in, and people are there, and sometimes they like have their kid with them, and they're just joking and laughing, and that community has been invaluable. And I know that you have kind of lived around the world, and I have gotten to do some traveling myself, and there's such different models of care in different countries, but we also still face some of the same problems. But some of the healthiest communities that I ran into were ones where old traditions were still present. And things like shamanism, or things like coming of age, or things like ceremony. Like, what are your thoughts, just with your worldly travels, on what you've seen of just even outside of what we're discussing with like our modern healthcare model and insurance, but like why community matters with those old ancient forms of wisdom?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think about it a lot because I'm in this men's group, and I've definitely thought about like the coming of age one, particularly because that it's sort of like a test of one's mettle, especially for men, right? To be trusted enough to be in the community, right? To show that when the chips are down, you'll do what you need to do to protect your community, and like that is wholly missing from Western society, right? So yeah, I think those kind of things are extremely valuable. I think you're starting to see a resurgence of those kind of ideas because people realize it is severely missing, and I hope that we may have lost a generation or two. I might be in a lost generation myself. We might be in a lost generation, but I think there's a lot of potential for that. I see Dr. Fawzi says, I need to find a men's group. Check out the Mankind Project. Like they have groups everywhere. They have meetup groups everywhere. It's been very, very helpful for me to be in a group of emotionally mature men to, have a sounding board for things that come up in my life that isn't my wife. And to be able to be on a pathway towards integrity, communication, and that kind of stuff. It's been very, very valuable.
That's actually a really good question. Just with like your experience of learning about all these communities and resources, if people were trying to find communities to join something like that, what are just some of the ones that come off the top of your head that people can check out?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool ones. I mean, people are doing this now because it's sort of like an obvious need. It's a more obvious need post pandemic. So some that I like. There's one group called Healing Strong, which is basically a meetup for people who are undergoing cancer therapies that want to do natural therapies alongside and want to have a group of people that will help them to do that. I talked about that in the book. The men's group I've found, I think that Mankind Project is really valuable. My friend Andrew Horn has this men's project that he does as well. I'll remember the name of that in a minute. Junto, it's We Junto, and he's doing weekends there. So I think there's a lot. There's many ones there, but I think if you look on online sites like Eventbrite, there are definitely people going out and creating one, and I think it is cool to um, be in one, but starting one is actually really valuable as well because a lot of the benefits of community accrue to you. So I always say when people say, hey, what shall I do, my feeling is, yeah, you can join one. It really depends on your personality type, but going on Eventbrite, putting on a local place that you could meet that's kind of healthy, like a coffee shop or a salad place, and saying, hey, I want to pull together an autoimmune disease group, can be valuable. There's a number of ones that I talk about in the book for specific conditions that I think are really valuable. And obviously, if you join a movement of something that's already growing, they have like structure and content and tools. I've always thought the easiest thing to do, honestly, would just be a book club, right? Meet up once a month, read a book in between time, talk about that book. There is a book in every niche of chronic illness. And most of those books are very empowering, especially if they've been written by a functional medicine doctor. You've had plenty of those people on your platform, I can see over the last, few years. So then it's like, okay, you've got a digestive condition. You want to, there's probably 10 books that you could line up really easily. All you have to do is do the Eventbrite, show up at the spot, be kind and compassionate, and and have a how much do you really want to reverse your chronic illness? How important is it to you? If it's really important, then act like it.
Absolutely. And, for anyone listening, one of my goals for the last years that I've been working on my back end is putting together a community that'll be, this one will be mostly online, but it's also a way to direct you to other things that you can find so you can find what's right for you. Because the question I get the most all the time is like, how do I find this? And I am always, commenting on things and telling people, but just like individual care, it's like if you tell people one at a time, just doesn't reach as far. And so that's one of my goals in the next year. So I could not agree more. And thank you for sharing those. So I guess just like a few other questions. So you talk a lot about how our use of technology is shifting and changing in healthcare. And I think there's like a lot of different angles that we can look at that from. But I think that was actually one of the weird gifts in 2020, right? Is that everyone got shoved online at the same time. And it actually ended up creating a lot more connection. Although now we're kind of struggling with the meeting in person thing, which is its own form of connection because you just can't replace like in person energy. But just with the technology and the fact that we are being more connected and, you know, that people in rural areas that didn't always used to have access to things can now have access. Just, yeah, what are some of your opinions or things that you've discovered or run into around the technology boom?
Oh man, I think my opinion changes on that pretty regularly. I think overall it's a net negative. I mean, honestly, like in the house, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I run my business from home. I run my business off my phone, and I'm super aware of the fact that I'm setting up a bad example for her in how to like integrate with technology because like I'm addicted to my phone, and I'm sure a lot of people realize, you know, are that where it's like you're used to that dopamine hit and doing it. I'm trying to get myself to a point where I can, you know, have enough team to manage my stuff so that I can just interact in the ways that I want to interact like this and not have to like be posting and commenting and all this stuff because it's, you know, it's not,
It's a
you know,
lot.
it's a lot and it's unhealthy. I mean, it is literally stealing your attention from the things that are most important right in front of you. And so I think overall it's a net negative. I think there's an illusion of community and those communities can get shattered very quickly. I mean, how many people have you spoken to where they thought they had a cohesive community and then either COVID or Israel, you know, came in and completely destroyed the cohesion inside their group? I mean, that like one after the other, these most you know, most divisive things have reduced coherence and connection inside groups who probably thought they thought the same, right? And so I really much more focused on trying to be present when I'm present to be present. You know, when I just finished a 7-week traveling tour because it's like conference season in my world, and that's what I do. So when I'm away, I'm a lot more open to using the technology, but then you have to get out of the habit. And now it's like my kids are right there, and I don't want to like miss the opportunity to really engage with them. Struggle every day. My daughter last year bought me a phone prison to put the phone in during like dinner and after dinner. So, you know, that was a moment. That was my Father's Day gift, right? So there's a moment of reflection as to like, how am I showing up and, you know, what am I doing? So that's my thoughts on it. It's probably not that popular, but I think it's true.
No, I think it's a really valid point. And, you know, I talk to my clients about this where it's like, it's also about the way that you use it. Because if you are scrolling social media, looking at everything that makes you feel inadequate in your own life, probably not the healthiest way to use it. If you are scrolling, looking for things that inspire you and looking for groups to participate in that don't involve you being on your phone, probably the right way to use it. So it's like, I do think taking breaks and all that is immensely important, and realizing that every single time that you're using your phone or getting a notification or seeing something new as you scroll, that's a dopamine hit, which is basically like cocaine, which is why our phones are addictive. So yes, I think having a phone prison or a designated time where you are off of your phone is important. And like, I'm guilty of it myself. It's just one of the things that also comes with running business, but finding that balance and organizing your team in a way that allows you to do that, I think is priceless.
Yeah.
So,
I think about the levels that I've gone to avoid my daughters being exposed to the poison that we started off with, right? Where I choose to live, what kind of school they go to. Like, I've made extremely conscious choices to maximize their chances of being not poisoned by either, you know, actual poisons, food and the environment, you know, brain poisons, i.e., you know, normal school, but now like this thing is in my house and, you know, has the potential to be a way of importing it. So you're right, it's about like thinking about how you use it and being congruent and consistent across your principles.
absolutely. And yeah, I'm so glad that you pointed out that there's different kinds of poisons, right? Like, it's not all just physical poison. Some of it is also like mindset poison and those kinds of things. So what you follow, who you talk to, who you spend your time with is also a part of your health. And I know, like, I think we're kind of coming up on about 30 minutes here, and I want to honor your time and everything. But if we were gonna wind down a little bit, what are some of the facts that you've learned in your journey to better healthcare that you wish everybody knew, or just some of the staggering things that you've run into?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that pushed me towards making the second book was that loneliness was the biggest driver of all cause mortality, right? So bigger than nutrition, bigger than alcohol, bigger than, all those
Smoking,
areas. And that was
everything.
driving it. And not only, driving dysfunction, but also driving overuse of the healthcare system, right? Because not only is it like this chronic social stress that's driving pathology, but like my mum before she passed away would overuse the healthcare system because she was completely isolated during COVID, didn't have anyone to talk to. And so, the district nurse or the GP was someone that you could actually just like say, oh, I need an appointment, and have that kind of human connection. So that's one thing that I think is really mission critical for people to understand, because if you are experiencing this, like it's as bad as smoking. It's worse, than doing those kind of things, and it's consistent. So that would be one thing. And then I think, like I really feel that, we're living like, of all the poisons, like the poisons that are in our like physical environment are super mission critical. And so just being super aware of that over the last 18 years being in this world, and seeing the studies on glyphosate and seeing the studies on, poison, like I'm in a strategy where it's like just minimize purchased poisons, I guess.
If there's if there's a couple things I wanted my clients to walk away with knowing, it's vote with your dollar, do nourishing things, avoid toxic things. And when it comes to that loneliness factor, like, you can be lonely surrounded by people. And that is also the importance of finding a community that you connect with. And even if it's not like a health community or something revolving around a condition, like, just the same methodologies that we were talking about of how to find a community, I think is incredibly important for people. So if we were going to end on kind of like a nice visionary positive note, if if this was going to the place that you wanted it to be, where you're like, this is what I want for the world, like, this is what I want for healthcare, this is what I want for our society, like, what would that look like? And then if people wanted to learn more about you or your books or reading more about this, where would you direct them?
So I think the thing that I'm fighting overall, which I think is what I'm looking to create, is harmony, and disharmony is the sort of the root cause of that, or the root dysfunction. So I'm definitely in service of harmony at all levels. And if you go to jamesmaskell.com, you can see the projects that I'm involved in. And I would say I am reasonably, I'm always an optimist, and I'm optimistic about what's happening. I see a lot of like things that I thought might never change are changing in front of my eyes in healthcare, where people are realizing that, we're all, going completely the wrong direction with people's health. Even things like, so you're a chiropractor, right? So, you know, one of the things that's been very tricky for people to understand is that chiropractic and Ayurveda and Chinese medicine and all of these things, and naturopathy, have at their center this idea of vitalism, that there's like a vital force within you, right? Innate in chiropractic. And that thing has been very difficult for doctors to get their head around, because they're not taught about it. And if there was something that was this innate force that was happening, they should probably know about it, right? And they don't. So how do you make those worlds connect? Well, we just showed, like, in our latest functional forum, and coming actually in December, you can now measure the energy that is flowing from mitochondria, right, in the cells. Mitochondria is like the master organizer. In fact, it was said the other day that the mitochondria is actually the brain. The nucleus is the library, and
Cool.
it's the mitochondria that's the brain. And if you do, there's certain testing emerging where you can test the amount of energy coming out of the mitochondria, and essentially looking at those two things from the same end, you can say that is the vital force. Acupuncture as well, right? Acupuncture has chi, Ayurveda has prana. So if we're looking for coherence and agreement, that's arriving. that's arriving, you know, and science is coming from this end and vitalism is coming from this end. If you participate in vitalism, you end up being healthier. And if you can measure mitochondrial function, you can measure the energy flowing and the way that things are orchestrated at that level. And eventually you see that there's like cohesive. There's cohesive and harmony across seemingly like completely um, disparate areas. And so that gives me hope in that, like, things where it looks like there's, you know, antagonistic is actually harmonious. We just need to, you know, keep on growing and keep thinking about things like that. And so those are the kind of things that give me hope.
Absolutely. And, I just saw one question that's like Eastern versus Western medicine. What are the thoughts? It's kind of exactly what he was just describing. Like Eastern medicine tends to operate in the model of vitalism, and all of them might call it something slightly different or have mildly different perspectives. But the whole idea is you trust that your body has an innate capacity to heal, whereas the Western model knows that but doesn't emphasize it. And the Western model is more around suppressing things that are wrong, and it's very well intentioned, and I think they all serve their own purpose in their own way, but the synergistic blend and the harmony of them that he's talking about, I think, is where the real magic lies. So just thank you so much for taking the time to do this, even when you're feeling a little under the weather. If there's any last thoughts you wanted to share with people, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say, you know, structures are being created by which we can see wholesale change in our lifetimes to this particular topic, but it's not going to be evenly distributed. And so, you know, today you have to take first responsibility for taking care of yourself and your family, and then once you've got that sorted, go out into the community and support. And just know that there are, you know, projects underway where, you know, large scale coherence across multiple people will happen, but it might take 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get to where you are. But, you know, there's a lot of smart people working on it, smarter than I am, and I'm excited to understand that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And if anyone wants to read the book that we were discussing, it's called The Community Cure. Right there. Yep. Perfect. Thank you. And it's really great. And it just talks about the evolution of everything. So thank you for all you're doing, James. It just, yeah, thanks for making a difference in the world.
Thank you. And thank you for, yeah, I mean, obviously, since I've known you, you've built an amazing community yourself by being true and speaking your truth and getting on it. So I'm grateful to see you making that change, and grateful to know you.
Well, thank you. Same to you. And hey, the evolution of functional medicine community is kind of where it all started for me. So thanks for that.
No,
All right.
no problem.
Have
Take
a
care.
wonderful day. Get some good rest.
All right, will do. Bye.